to welcome everybody out to the Royse City City Council meeting. I'd just like to recognize that we have Councilman DeFoya, Councilmember Yeoman, Councilmember Saxton, Councilmember Paul joining us today, and we're excusing at least for this moment until she arrives, Councilmember Burrell. We'd like to just take a second, if we can, and have a moment of silence. So if you'll join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Burrell is with us tonight as well. Thank you. Okay, we've got some consent items. We'll do this in just in group. Is there any comments or changes or recommendations to the consent items outlined in the agenda? Council?
I noticed there was discussion on some spelling errors and different deeds. Did we get those all? Okay.
So the couple of comments I brought up about the agenda, or not the agenda, the minutes, we'll approve them as amended.
Okay, so have you got those, Morgan? So everybody, okay? Okay. Do I have a, make a motion to approve?
The August 21st council meeting and the August 14th work session with a few adjustments that were noted.
And the request for preliminary approval of the subdivision. We're going to do all these at one time, so.
And the request for preliminary subdivision approval of Midland Square Commercial Phase 2 subdivision located at approximately 4088 South Midland Drive.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I think I heard not in favor?
Yeah, can we separate those?
Do you want to pull the item from the consent agenda there?
I think we should need to vote on one and two
because
separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was
That's
thinking.
good.
We were
I
doing.
was.
I thought we were
that's-
voting on them
So,
separate.
so typically, on the consent items, you'll just vote to approve them all.
All.
But you also have the opportunity, if there's something you'd like a discussion on, you can pull that from the consent
Correct.
agenda, and we discuss it, and then you can take a vote on it.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll break this into two pieces
So you're
then?
agree.
approving the one, and then you're moving to remove the other one from the consent agenda.
Okay, so let's go this way then. Do I have a motion then to approve the August 21st City Council minutes and the August 14th work session minutes?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the request for preliminary subdivision approval?
I think it's been pulled for discussion, is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
That's what it sounds
Okay.
I
like.
think you could.
And let's have a discussion then. I'll open that for discussion. Council? Where do you want to start?
Well, I mean, I guess I can start and just basically said that I didn't approve this when it came to be recommendation. So there's basically no discussion.
We go ahead and vote on it, Mayor. We kind of went through, we hashed it through. Some of us were opposed to it.
Yeah.
We weren't all there at the, I wasn't there on that portion of it, but it did pass through that way with the rezone request. But I think we should go ahead and vote and see where we play out.
Okay, so lack of discussion then, let's just go ahead and we'll go for a vote.
Okay.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the request for preliminary subdivision approval Midland Square Commercial Phase 2 subdivision located approximately 4088 South Midland Drive? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Now, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All oppose?
Nay.
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 Okay. That's going to have to be reworked. Jason? Okay, so I don't see Steve here. So obviously there's
Steve-
some,
Steve had something he couldn't attend, so I'm here and I'll take care of whatever Steve needs
okay.
to do.
So the vote basically was 2-3.
Yeah, so it didn't pass. There weren't
It didn't
required
pass.
3 votes to pass.
It just needs to be reworked or worked.
Yes, it had, for it to pass, it's gonna have to come against,
Correct.
council again, so.
Okay. So let's jump into the action items. Consideration of Resolution 1821, a resolution for Roy City Council to declare intent to annex portions of the existing unincorporated islands as recommended by the Weber County Commission. Now, on this one, let me just make a comment, Andy, Jason. We're just going to go ahead without discussion, or we're going to allow the council to discuss this further? Or should we just go for the roll call vote on this?
You know what, this is that first step in the legal
Correct.
process that we have going forward with the annexation. And so what's required is that we just do a resolution of our intent to annex. So if everybody's fine, you can go forward with the motion at this time?
Okay.
or-
It just
we'll take it that way.
basically starts the process as we had in our town hall meeting with the residents and council. This just starts the process as we're
Correct.
required to by rule.
Correct. Yeah, my interest would be is that do we want to have an opportunity to discuss? But since I'm sensing probably we can go right to the vote, what I'm going to do is ask for a motion to approve Resolution 1821.
Motion to approve.
Okay?
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. This is a roll call vote. Morgan?
Councilmember Yeoman,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Tafoya.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we have a Resolution 1822, a resolution approving the real estate contract for purchase and sale between the State of Utah Division of Facilities. Jason, you want to talk to this a little bit to make sure we understand what this resolution is going to do for us?
Yes, so Mayor and Council, in prior city council meetings, we've already approved the purchase of this property. The state and the closure of the property needs this to be a formal documentation, so that's why we're bringing it to you today. So this is kind of a package deal. So we've already bought it, so it just needs to be part of for the title company.
Okay.
Okay. Council, comments, questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 18-22, the resolution approving the real estate contract to purchase and sell between the State of Utah Division of Facilities Construction and the management of Roy City Corporation.
Second.
Okay. This is roll call vote. Morgan?
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Yeoman,
Aye.
Councilmember Tafoya,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Resolution 1820-23, a resolution or Roy City Council declaring the week of September 17th through the 23rd, 2018 as the Constitutional Week. Let me give you a little history on this one. First thing is that we were approached by the Daughters of the American Revolution. Just a little history, Council. Constitution Week is a commemoration of America's most important document. It is celebrated annually during the week of September 17th through the 23rd. The United States Constitution stands as a testament to the tenacity of Americans throughout history to maintain their liberties, freedoms, and inalienable rights. This celebration of the Constitution was started by the Daughters of the American Revolution. In 1955, that group petitioned Congress to set aside September 17th through the 23rd annually to be dedicated for the observance of Constitution Week. The resolution was later adopted by the U.S. Congress and signed into public law August 2nd, 1956 by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The Daughters of the American Revolution has also erected a structure that is built in tribute to the Constitution of the United States. That particular Constitutional Hall, which is for performing arts, opened in 1929. The aims of the Constitutional Week celebration are to emphasize citizens' responsibility for protecting and defending the Constitution, informing people that the Constitution is the basis of Americans' great heritage and the foundation for our way of life, and to encourage the study of the historical events which led to the framing of the Constitution in September 1787. That is the purpose for this particular resolution. Any questions in terms of what we're attempting or trying to do?
Is there any like activities or anything that corresponds with this week?
If this council approves that particular resolution, this particular document will be part of for a better display that will take place in the library
Oh,
through that
okay.
entire week.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so that's kind of our portion of it, and then the things that the Daughters of the American Revolution will be performing or providing to the public during that time.
Okay, at our
At our
local
public
library.
library.
Okay.
Mhm. Any questions, council? Okay.
I
having
make a motion that we approve Resolution 1823, a resolution for Roy City Council declaring the week of September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hear none? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, that is a roll call. Let's do a roll call.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
Morgan.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Thank you.
Councilmember Yeoman,
Aye.
Councilmember Tafoya,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Perfect, thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor, now that that motion's been approved, this resolution, is that something that we can be put on our website so that our citizens know that during that week that they'll have some
idea.
information to be able to see at the public library?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, that's an excellent idea. Okay. Okay, council, we're going to have a discussion for consideration of property located at 4593 South, 1900 West. Do I have a motion to go into public hearing?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to go into public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Having said that, we're in a public hearing to discuss the property located at 4593 South, 1900 West, specifically in Ordinance 18-18 to amend the general plan, and included as an Ordinance 1819 to amend the zoning map. Jason, or Andy, you going to talk this?
Well, I'll take that.
Please.
Since he couldn't be there, but this is an application that was from Tamara Vaudry requesting a rezone of that property on 1900 West. Can you hear me okay? We can't hear you back. Can't hear me back there?
Is his on?
I know, I'm wondering if any of them are on.
You gotta talk into the, okay. Maybe I should go up to the front,
There you go.
because I'm gonna look this way, I'll just go up there. But, and we don't have I don't have a presentation from Steve, what we can put up on there, but this was from Tamara Vaudry, and what they wanted to do with this property is, it's about a little over half an acre of property there on 1900. Currently, that property, more than half of it is zoned R4, the remaining part is zoned commercial. And it's right next to the Brown property that we had changed the zoning to make all that residential on their lot, somewhere in the past year. So she's just asking that the rest of it be zoned R4, so that's why we have it before you, to change the map and to change the zoning or the general plan to make those requirements.
Okay.
Right now, there's no application in, and they're not aware of anybody who's wanting to do any kind of development there.
Okay. Council, any questions? Okay. Andy, then we'll open it for public comment. Anybody who would like to come up and talk about this particular piece of property, please do so. If you give us your name and address. Thank you.
My name is Kent Colhase. I represent Tammy Vaudry. Some of you may know her as Tammy Hanna. My address is 1653 April Land Court in Draper, Utah.
Draper. Okay.
Tammy actually is a neighbor of mine. She has been married and moved to Draper, but her roots and her family, and I think she even has a nephew on the fire department here in Roy, and she ran her insurance business out of this location for many years. And she has attempted to find a tenant for the property She's found vape shops and other uses that have not been consistent with the zoning or the city, and it's been difficult for her. I've been helping her for a year or so to market the property for sale, and the interest we have has been from groups that want to see this and the adjoining properties. They're all small properties, around a half acre. There's 3 of them, and they want to see those go into the same R4 residential. The neighboring property to the south is now a nice retail center. And then you have this property, you have 3 homes that are all together here. They each have access out on the 1900. We're guessing that UDOT might want to take some of those accesses away as it's redeveloped, and that's fine because there's an access in the rear of the center property, which allows access through the residential neighborhood in the back. And the idea would be is that all these properties, except maybe the front of the middle property, where that's a different owner, but want to join together as an assemblage to sell to one group to redevelop it and make it a beautiful project. So that's the interest. So Tammy is asking, essentially, the majority of the property, as was stated before, is zoned R4 residential of her property, that a little more than a half acre. And she's asking the front portion that's currently zoned commercial to be zoned R4, which is consistent with the other 2 properties and the rear portion of her property. So we see this more as a cleanup issue, so that the properties can be joined together and developed by one user and be new and redeveloped, and that house would likely be removed and be replaced with something that's a little bit more pleasing.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else who has a comment? Like to step up? Okay. Seeing none. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. You give us your name and address. Thank you.
My name's Julie Fagan, and our family owns the property at 4571 South, 1900 West, which is one of the 3 properties being discussed. I'd like to base my comments on our family history here in Roy, and also my perspective, having worked for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for over 23 years as a national program director, and also as the state director here in Utah, as well as the state of Connecticut. The Browns actually moved to Roy and have had property since May of 1920, when Harry Brown bought an orchard that was located on 1900. In 1923, he invited my grandparents to move from Idaho to manage that property and to run that fruit farm. They then bought it in 1930 when Uncle Harry died. In November of 1937, the home was burned to the ground with an electrical fire. Suspense there. Few things survived that fire. One of them was the story of the whole community that came together to rebuild that home in that cold winter. The Browns then built 5 homes, one for each of their children surrounding the farm. While building one of those homes, our grandfather fell off scaffolding. It broke and he fell, causing him to be blind the rest of his life. It was later that the family then sold the property behind the 12 acres on the highway, those 12 acres of orchard, sold it, and it became Harmony Park, single-family homes from that orchard back to Sand Ridge Junior High School. This led to single-family homes for many people. As you can see, the Browns have had almost 100 years of history and investment in Roy City. 5 generations of Browns have called Roy their home. This rich history is significant to me and my family. Lou Brown is here, my cousin, and my sisters are here with me today. We recognize the city would prefer to keep this property zoned as commercial for tax purposes. But in all the history of marketing these properties as commercial, there has not been any offers for acquisition in retail or business purposes. All of the offers that we've received have been for multifamily development, and most of those have been for townhouses. The problem that we've ran into is the zoning of the third property unit as we tried to create an appendage. We know that multifamily development is the highest and best use for the properties as demonstrated by the offers made as well as the appraisals conducted. We joined with the two neighboring properties, including the property before you, to increase a land mass that would be viable and attractive for developers to build. When these developers have approached the city, the rezoning issue was the difficulty. Even an easement through the property before you for utility access was not an option. Last month when we appeared, there was one public comment that came in about concerns around density. And they cited a University of Maryland study, which I'm familiar with, as well as many other studies. Density was not the only issue that raised the concerns of this residence, but the others weren't voiced. Density alone doesn't cause problems in a neighborhood. What we found in studies was that the age and the design of the housing stock. Many of those properties in the study that was cited were structures built in the 1930s and even before, and even high-rise structures of 20 to 30 floors in design. Low rates of home ownership and a large number of absentee landlords. Also, where management failed to properly screen residents or maintain properties led to those declines. And of course, a lack of governance or code enforcement. I know that density has also been mentioned here in Roy around development. And I want to also address that. Here in Utah, there are a number of things that contribute to density. The biggest factor on the Wasatch Front is geography. Over 80% of the population of Utah lives on the Wasatch Front. And that landmass is trapped between the Great Salt Lake and the mountains. But the Wasatch Front is also the area where the water supply, transportation centers, resources, universities, and jobs are concentrated. It also has a dry climate and a shortage of water, which leads to smaller lots, thus an increase of density. While it's true that Roy is listed as the 5th most densely populated area in Utah, this same report ranks Ogden as 22nd, Provo as 29th, and Salt Lake City as 37th. Now, you may ponder that and wonder why. Well, if you look at the factors as to why Roy might have that ranking, you'll find that Roy, as you know, is landlocked by its surrounding communities. The report looks at people per square mile, excluding waters, nothing else. That means that airports, transportation centers, industrial parks found in Ogden, Provo, and Salt Lake impact the ranking of density for those locations. None of these are found in Roy, which means the report does not look at comparable community factors. Common sense will tell us that Roy, with an 84% owner occupancy rate and over 90% single-family units in its housing stock, differs greatly from the characteristics found in other cities. Given this characteristic on the Wasatch Front, the question may not be density, but the quality and affordability of housing needed for Roy. The housing market is where the demand for land exists. Affordable housing is one of the priorities for the state of Utah. Cost of land is high, water usage demands smaller lots, and the skyrocketing prices are unaffordable to most. In tight housing markets, you know, I'm sure you're seeing it, I've seen it, police officers, teachers, firefighters, senior citizens, and even our own children cannot find suitable housing options. Redevelopment in new multifamily housing units provide an affordable option, one where residents shop and pay taxes in Roy and make the community viable. This proposal for development is further consistent with federal, state, and your own community development goals. Quote, to improve the quality of life in Roy City by boosting neighborhood livability and appearance, emphasizing quality housing design, construction, and choice. I would suggest the City Council may want to reconsider the market demands. We encourage you to follow the market rather than asking the market to conform to a zoning plan that was developed during a much earlier point in history. This option makes way for revitalization in Roy. It makes way for our family legacy to continue. And it also provides a wise development option for Roy City. Having worked on the national level, I know how important local officials like you are. And I want to end by thanking you for your service and your consideration to improve the city of Roy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anybody else would like to comment on this?
Hi, my name is Lou Brown. I am not a resident of Roy, but I'm still a taxpayer. My family, we still own land down on 4400 South, and I was here a year and a half ago to speak to you about a proposal to develop our property, which is immediately north of the subject property, in the townhomes. And I rode over there just a few minutes ago, and I could see that the development has started. Just by way of background, and for whatever it's worth, I've spent 40 years in market analysis and in buying properties for major corporations and traveled all over North America. And as Julia said, generally speaking, development occurs because of demand, not because of how a city prescribes the property to be developed based upon a zoning code or master plan. Back then, a few years ago, I mentioned to those of you who were here at the time that our property was on the market for over 2 years, and we had no offers for commercial development. I would have loved to have had an offer for commercial development. And as Kent and Julie has mentioned tonight, they've had no offers either. A few things that I'd like you to consider. Right now, in the hub of your city, and I know that you already know this, I rode through there again tonight. I looked at every property that was for sale 2+ years ago when we put the property on the market. Those lots are still vacant. You have vacant commercial development property in the hub of your city that are either vacant or underutilized presently. And I would suggest that if retailers are coming to the market, they're going to look at those spaces before they look at the subject property. I'm sure you understand, has been explained, the developer that is looking to buy their property is looking to build townhomes. And you might ask, well, why townhomes? Just a couple of comments, and I'll read. This is from a report I prepared and submitted to you that's in the public records a couple of years ago. The property fits the recommendations of the Envision Utah Master Planning Commission because of its location and the need to provide a broad range of housing stock into a community. Recent news articles have documented the high demand for housing where a school teacher, fireman, police officer, young couple, retired couple looking to downsize, or a first-time buyer can invest in a home and afford to buy a home. I spent about 3 minutes on the internet this afternoon and pulled up from the Deseret News. Utah has a housing crisis and a fact in the lack of affordable housing. Coalition to tackle Utah's affordable housing problem. I know you all know this. Act now to avoid a housing affordability crisis as in California. Affordable housing is the solution to Utah's housing crunch. These are all articles that are run in the newspaper in the last 6 months. I would ask you to consider that the people that buy townhomes those are owner-occupied. They're people that want to invest in real estate. They're not renters. They take good care of the property. Townhome developments have all kinds of restrictions put on them. dealing with garbage collection, landscaping, roads, and maintenance, which removes a lot of problems for city maintenance. The subject property is also very close and fits in with the plan of Envision Utah to tap in and utilize the Front Runner facility that's located in Rhodey. Roy, you're lucky to have that. I live in Farmington and we have one there too. That means that people can take a trip to Salt Lake for a few dollars. If you stop and compute the price of driving a car to Salt Lake and back, the true cost is over $25 per trip. When you stop and consider what the IRS allows for tax deductions for people who drive a car, if you run a business, your deduction is over 50 cents a mile. That cuts down on congestion on the roads for people that use that. It cuts down on pollution. And that's one of the reasons Envision Utah, the governor, the governor's staff, and many local communities are approving townhome projects. In Farmington, there's been a lot of them built. In Kaysville, in Harriman, in Riverton, Salt Lake City. I know that. For 10 years, I bought property for the LDS Church. Daybreak, the largest residential development in the state of Utah, has had hundreds and hundreds of townhomes developed there. So I submit to you that townhomes are an asset to your community and they're owner-occupied. In summation, I would ask you to consider that it provides for efficient use of water resources. It will generate income to the city to offset development costs with the impact fees you charge. It will generate jobs with the construction portion of the project. Residents living in the project will shop and drive at the local community establishments here, thus generating greater sales tax. The local schools have the capacity to accommodate more population, more students. I checked on all of these things when we did our project. The roads are adequate for the proposed development. All utilities are available to the project. The Planning Commission recommended, I think, the proposal today. I have spoken to Steve Parkinson, and I know his feelings about townhome development. And as Julie said, the development in this area with our property now under construction and the subject property will give a facelift to the community, will be an asset to Roy City. I recommend you give consideration to approving the proposal. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Anybody else would like to make comment? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, council, do I have a motion to go out of public hearing?
Make a motion to go out of public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, council, we are out of public hearing. Comments on the ordinance 1818 to amend the general plan.
Question. We're talking, how many townhomes would you be putting on? I mean, what do you envision? Either, yeah, please.
Want me to stand up?
Yeah,
The way I understand it, the R4 zone has about 10 units to the acre. The property in question is less than a quarter acre. And then the three properties that are being marketed together are about an acre and a quarter total. So that gives you an idea of how many units we're talking about here.
12.
But
So-
that doesn't take into consideration that sometimes smaller developments like this, when they're an acre and a quarter, has restrictions relative to side yard, rear yard, front yard setbacks, also landscaping requirements that are up to 40%. So sometimes, so that 10 number might be optimistic, we don't know yet. Because somebody would have to do a site plan and look at the city ordinance and go through all that and see how it was developed.
Okay.
and do you have any kind of cost range where they're owner occupied?
Do I have what?
An estimate of,
He's not the
like if
developer.
somebody was to buy one?
Oh, what the retail value of
Yeah.
this would be? I personally don't. It really depends on the quality of the unit. Townhouses are different than other units. There's
Right.
Different types, and couldn't say per se, but I would say that it would be below 200,000 and then somewhere a little above 200,000.
You think it'd be below 200,000? Because, wow.
I'm a real estate
Well, no, I know, I live in a small home and I know what property is selling for in Roy.
Councilmember Saxon, the proposal is just to make it so the Brown development is more, just bigger.
Bigger.
No, but, yeah.
I don't set prices, I just observe them.
That's just to pull that into that development that's been approved to make it more appealing and, be honest, to make it clean it up maybe, but also make more money for everybody involved that way. Right. Okay. But back to this discussion amongst us. You guys know I'm opposed to this. I always have been, always will be. When you start taking away commercial space to provide residential housing, it is a big mistake for us as a community and as a city as a whole, especially since we are built out. And the more you take those away, that less tax base is potentially out there.
Well, and I was going to say, I mean, Councilman Saxton has been working hard on the economic development to be able to, try to get some businesses and stuff to be able to come in and look at Roy. And I agree. I mean, this is hard because it is taking away our commercial, land right there on 1900, which we have designated in our general plan that 1900 usually is set aside for our commercial district. Yeah, I didn't know until it was brought up now that all 3 parcels was now in question, because it was only brought to us that there was only the 1 parcel. Now I see all 3.
If that's.
No, it's just the front portion of that one is all.
Right.
right,
But
the
now
front
hearing
side.
that its intent is to possibly bring in all 3 and, into the R4 zone.
So the others are not currently R4?
They are currently R4. Everything is except the insurance business building right
okay,
now.
so I was misunderstood.
I can't put this up
Okay,
there, but if you look
got
at
it.
page 6, it
Got it. Okay.
clarifies what's
But you're-
R4 and what isn't.
Wow.
Andy, can you tell me how big that parcel is that is?
Oh, the parcel that's in question is
Exactly.
0.56 of an acre, so it's
It's-
barely over half.
Say
of
that
an
again.
acre.
Half an acre?
Yeah,
Okay,
just
thank you.
barely over half of an acre. And most of that is zoned R4 right now. And then the remaining part, which I think you said was about a quarter of that entire
Less than a
part,
quarter acre is the commercial.
is designated commercial.
Okay. Council, other comments, questions?
I have a question. As you come out of 4450, is that right? 4500. Is it almost straight across from there?
It's
farther
at
south.
40, isn't it 46 something?
4593 is the property in question.
Yeah.
So you've got this road right here.
Understand why that parcel was not put in the rezoning at the time that we were rezoned.
Because it was currently commercial. Currently had been used as commercial.
We were at that time, we were rezoned.
So the other part was rezoned, but that parcel wasn't because it was currently being used as commercial. Is that correct?
That property was operating the State Farm office at the time,
Correct.
at the front.
Yeah, what she's been doing for the past 20 years.
Well, that's why it wouldn't have been though considered because it was currently
They're gonna argue.
under commercial.
It's already in that zone.
Okay, other questions, comments? Council?
Just want to point out, I know Mrs. Hannah for a long time. I worked with her through DMV. She'd always come up to get records and stuff. She's been a very successful businesswoman. That's just proof right there that that is a good commercial spot, and she survived very well. She did very well.
It's a quarter of an acre. It's
Okay, question?
So we're talking about, I want to make sure. 'Cause I want to.
No, I understand.
We're talking about the front side of the property. And so we are talking actually less than half an acre of property
It's less than a
that
quarter
we're
of an
making
acre.
the move on.
I understand.
And,
what it is,
and you're looking at townhomes,
Doing the
if
whole
this is
property.
approved, being on that property, and you're estimating about 10 for the 3 parcels there?
10 per acre, so it would be 10 to 12 units total.
But the goal is
But-
to market that piece with the other
With the
two
other
houses
ones.
and everything together to make it one development. So they're not trying to just
Except
do
this,
R4 and develop that. They're trying to do that, those two
Plus
houses and
all of
that whole
that.
section
But-
is one big development.
Right, but that's already zoned
Yeah,
R4,
those two houses are R4
But that one
and so's
piece
this whole
isn't.
orchard.
right?
Yeah, see, the two houses and the back half of that property are R4. You're talking the front quarter acre of all of that is
It
commercial.
butts up against that little tiny commercial
You say
strip
it's
there.
better to leave it commercial to tie it
It's
with
not little
that, or it's
tiny,
better to
that
go
commercial
R4 and tie it
strip.
with that. I mean, that's the decision.
yeah, it's a tough one, whether,
Is everybody okay? Any other questions, comments, council?
Gosh, I'm going to be unpopular twice tonight.
Okay, hope that goes into the record. Council, having said that, okay, hearing no more comments or questions, I have a motion to approve ordinance 18-18 to amend the general plan, future land use map from commercial to very high-density multifamily residential. Do I have a motion?
Based on what's been shared, based on the recommendation of the Planning Commission, I make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a second. This is a roll call vote. Morgan?
Councilmember Paul.
Nay.
John, sitting the same way you are.
Councilmember Yeoman.
I'm gonna go aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
Aye.
Councilmember Tafoya.
Nay.
Councilmember Burrell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now, since that was approved, that was the first requirement to be approved, and the next ordinance deals the amending the zoning map. I couldn't do the zoning map amendment until the first ordinance was changed. So do I have a motion to approve ordinance 18-19 to amend the zoning map from from community commercial to R4 multifamily residential?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Aye. Second.
Okay, I have a
Sorry.
second. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Yeoman.
Aye.
Councilmember Tafoya.
Nay.
Councilmember Burrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
Aye.
Councilmember Paul.
Nay.
Okay,
Motion carries.
motion carries. So thank you. Okay. We're going to excuse Councilmember Tafoya. He has another commitment he has to go to. Okay. We're going to actually open up a public hearing to consider ordinance 1820, a request to amend Title 10 zoning regulation comprising of Chapter 17 table of use that deals with food trucks. Do I have a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? Okay, we're in a public hearing to discuss an ordinance that talks to the issue about food trucks.
Okay, Mayor, I'll take Steve's role again.
Thank you.
Okay?
Do you have a concern?
Can you hear me okay over there?
No, but that's okay. I can read lips.
Should I go to the,
I think it's best if you go to the front.
better if I go up there?
Yeah.
That way they
I
can hear
didn't
you.
see, and again, I might be looking wrong. I didn't actually see a copy of the ordinance. Is there one in our packet?
It is. Mhm.
Okay, am I
I
missing
think
it?
we
I
sent that
seem-
out later, didn't we? That it was part of that.
Oh,
So
that's
probably why you didn't see
why.
it over the weekend.
Okay, so I actually, I can't get the updates at my work, so that didn't actually come through, so I haven't had a chance to review that ordinance. Are you able to show that to us?
I can talk to you about it, and I think.
Okay, yeah, I don't have a
Councilmember
copy of that
Paul has
ordinance.
it.
I don't either.
Okay, now that brings up an interesting point. Okay, council, I'm just going to advise, we'll let the conversation go on as part of the public hearing, but I'd rather you not vote on something you do not understand or agree to. We can table this if necessary and pick it up next time, so consider that as we go through this process, when I hear council members didn't get a chance to read. But until then, please, if you'll give us a discussion on the food truck.
What we had, if you can all remember, back when there was a food truck that was proposed to come in with America First. And we ran into a problem there with the definition. America First looked at it, and we talk about, in our ordinance, you have to have a schematic scale drawing and a whole bunch of other things too when our definition is site plan. So it created a little bit of problem. For a food truck, you really shouldn't have to go out and hire an engineer and spend $1,000, $2,000 and have this big schematic drawing prepared. So what we've done is we've tried to correct that situation. And in looking at it, Steve looked through a lot of different cities. I think he went at least 10 different places, but kind of like something they had in Salt Lake. So what we did, we took a portion of that ordinance where we define, and let me see if I've got that. We define exactly what, I'm sorry, I don't have it there either, but if you can bear with me. Yeah, it's 1031-1. We made ours very similar to what Salt Lake has, and it's just a broad general definition. And it says, let's see. Sorry, I'm going between a couple of things here, but if you look in your packet, 10-3.
I don't like this.
That didn't bug me as much as.
I don't like the fact that you have to have.
Carlene, I think I'm running into the same problem you were.
Okay.
But this is an accurately scaled plan.
I've got it in front of me.
Yeah, I
Andy,
mean, we're
so,
reading. An accurately scaled plan
Yeah,
that illustrates the existing condition on a land
here
parcel.
we go, I found it. It's 1031-1. And so we would just change, instead of having that long detailed, if you can see on yours, it's been crossed out.
Yes.
All of that language, so we just go with an accurately scaled plan that illustrates the existing conditions on a land parcel and the details of the proposed development. So that's what we have there, but now this is where it goes down a little bit of a different road here. When you're looking at a permitted use, we have a more detailed site plan. So we mentioned site plans again when we were looking at permitted uses, so it's more detailed there. Then when you go to conditional uses, we have a lot of things that are required for your site plan there. And this is more of a temporary use. So what we've put in that temporary uses is food trucks, and then what we have here is a lot, quite a bit less of the requirement, just the things that we think we need to have when you do a food
So
truck.
can you explain what an accurately scaled plan is? Because to me, that requires more than just me handwriting something on an 8.5 by sheet, 8.5, 11 by sheet of piece of paper and handing it.
I'm saying this is where I'm going to park my food truck.
Absolutely, but that's our general overall definition. When you get into the food truck part, we don't say that. The food truck part, if you have that in front of you there, Councilmember Paul.
The whole,
The
okay.
part that says mobile food truck.
Yeah, it just says, if you look at 3 and then go to A,
Yeah.
site plan must be approved. Then it says the site plan consists of the following. So it's just there. You need 2 8.5 by 11, so you don't have to have this detailed site plan. And it just gives
So
the
10-31-1 is separate from the mobile
Yes.
food truck section.
yes, that's in a whole different chapter.
Okay, that's what confused me, because to me, it looked like the mobile
was
food
all-
truck conditions, the thing that needed, and then it continued on with 1031-1 that says an accurately scaled plan. And I'm
Right, so
like,
I think
these
that's where
food
you
trucks
throw it
aren't gonna
off.
go out and have a drafter draft up an accurately
Yeah.
scaled plan.
Right, so if you were looking at our ordinances, you went to Title 10 is where that general definition would be. Then when you go down farther, when you get to our temporary uses, and you look into Chapter 17, Table 2, that's where you find, for this definition, it talks about what the site plan is, which is less than what you would have for some of these other types of uses.
But they still have to
I
go out and
still-
research
that's-
the dimensions of the property.
That's the problem,
Okay,
yes.
and I think that's what Steve felt was necessary, and
Well,
in putting this together, we need to make sure that the access is appropriate and where they can get, because you don't want to be blocking your traffic in there. So that's why you just needed those. It could be on a sheet of paper too, if you're just
Oh,
writing,
okay.
You know, it
So we're
doesn't-
not requiring, okay, so what you're saying is we're not requiring them to go out and get the engineer site plan as far as like the dimensions
two
of the
papers
building and
inside,
everything.
you could
We're
draw.
just basically, so they can just say, okay, I'm gonna park at America First. They've got a building here on this corner. Here's the parking lot. This is where the food truck's gonna be located. Here's the access, and then they're good to go.
They could measure it off and write down the,
We're just trying to make it easier
Well,
for
yeah,
them.
no,
for a
no, I
food
want it
truck.
to be
Yeah,
easier.
yeah.
Yeah, I want it to be
Well,
easier.
yeah, because that was one of the
Because that
things.
was the thing that I was
So
having.
much.
'Cause
stays the same though, 17.2
I
is for
think-
mobile
Yeah.
food trucks.
yep.
I
that's-
think the problem that was confusing me is where it said 2 8.5 by 11 size copies of a site plan with the proposed location and the dimensions of the property boundaries and all locations. It still sounded like that we were requiring, like,
And then it says identifying the following. So this is all you need to identify.
Councilmember, if
Okay.
you believe that the wording is too restrictive, you can recommend amending that wording to be much more simpler, in which case we'll go in the ordinance.
Exactly.
So if you're saying as I'm stuck on an issue that says I have to get a measuring tape and have to start measuring all of the access points to be able to comply, you can simply say, I do not necessarily want that in the ordinance.
I think the intent, Andy, I think your intent is there as far as like what you're intending for them to do, you know,
Right.
just get an 8.5 by 11 and write it up. But I think the wording implies that they really have to have more of a detailed measurement of the site property
Well,
that
the
they're.
dimensions of the property
Yeah, the
would be-
dimensions and
That
everything.
would make that be exact.
Yes, to me, that's what I think that this implies.
Well,
And so I don't think
and
the
my
intent and
personal
the implication.
thinking that we do need some dimensions from it. You don't need to go out and hire an engineer, and you can typically.
So I need to know, like, if I got a food truck, I need to know how big that America First property
Parking lot.
is.
Yeah,
That building. So I got to
And
go
it-
out and measure it.
and it may be better we talk to Steve and have him give the justification for why we need those dimensions, but that was my understanding.
Yeah.
I think the
I-
We
question
need to
has
know
to
where
be
it's
asked.
located, and we need to make sure that there's enough space so it isn't blocking access.
Okay, and you said that he took this actually from Salt Lake City's?
No, not on this part.
The
On-
bottom part, that
On the
that
bottom
section,
part,
the actually,
the general
the
overall.
accurately scaled plan.
Yes, and that's how they do
I mean,
it.
I
Because-
understand the fact that we need to draw where access, so we know that
Yes.
emergency personnel, fire trucks and that can get in.
Right.
The only hangup I have is do I gotta get a tape measure or a walk-off stick and measure
Yeah.
accurately
Yes,
every piece of
yes.
parcel property that touches
Yeah.
it?
Yes,
I mean, I
that's
know
what
that's one
I
of the
agree.
hangups when I talk to the folks down here at the Davis Hospital. They're kind of in that food truck program, and they were talking about how difficult it is to bring food trucks into Roy because of the requirements. I understand this is simplifying it. I still
I
wonder if
still-
that measurement is too
Yeah.
restrictive.
Yeah,
then
I think
The
these wording
council then
needs to
just
be
simply
changed.
change, or either that or table it if you don't feel like we're adequate and we need to make
How
some
could-
adjustments.
Exactly.
What are some ideas for changing
I know,
that?
because I think we need, because we're trying to come with the in-between of the intent that what we want and what,
the language.
yeah, the language of what it implies.
So do you have some suggestions for it? And what, like the mayor said, we could always table this and come back.
Because
With something
that's what I've
different,
been
but-
hearing too. Roy is just really hard to get food
Would
trucks
Would
in.
it be inappropriate to say the approximate dimensions?
Could say that.
No,
Because then it wouldn't
What-
have to
what's
be
the,
measured off.
Yeah, that's fine.
What do you think? You're the legal people here.
I always have a little trouble with approximate.
So did my editor.
Here's the
Especially-
balancing
especially,
act.
If there's requirements in a parking lot that you have to have so much width for travel and so much for parking
I
spaces.
understand.
you may have to be specific on that.
The challenge you run into
You can't get a
is,
fire truck down the middle of it.
Right, you've
if
got to be
if the
able
ordinance
to.
is so restrictive that it's not in the best interest to the food truck owners to come and solicit in Roy,
Then they won't.
then they won't.
I know.
And so the question is, in essence, do you want food trucks? Because you can eliminate food trucks by just tightening this ordinance so tight that nobody can live in it. Or do you want to make it possibly unsafe or have risks by leaving it so general statements that fundamentally you can put a food truck anywhere?
I mean, that's the problem.
Okay.
You load the parking lot with food trucks, and you can't get a fire truck down the middle of it.
I understand.
Now you've just created a situation, but yeah, I want them.
Yeah, I don't think food trucks are going away. I think they are a viable business, and there's actually more of them.
They will if we run them out of town, though.
Well, okay,
we can't-
I understand that. I don't. I don't want to make it too restrictive that they can't come into Roy. I mean, that's one of the complaints that I hear all the time, that, they won't come.
Well, then let's do this, council. How about if we take a motion to table, task the city to come back with some alternatives to give us some ideas about how we could best phrase this so it's not as restrictive as it appears the council believes it is.
Yeah, I mean, you don't say anything as far as you say a size copy of a site plan. What about, is drawing, either a drawing of a site plan showing?
Could you say, can be
Sketch.
Can be
The mayor-
hand-drawn, can be, I'm not sure.
You can hand draw anything. The secret, I
The
think, that's
problem
being
is
here
to
is you have to
scale.
put dimensions on it that says this is how wide the access points are.
That, I think, that word dimensions, I think is the word is our biggest hang-up, because then to me,
It is, and I
that
see it
is,
both ways. It's restrictive, but it's also necessary, because I want to be able to make sure I can get a fire truck down the middle if one of these things
but I don't,
spontaneously combust, because we're frying French fries and corn dogs and all kinds of things.
Ambulance can't get in, or what, we need to know where the access to the building is and a few things like that.
I say table it for a cleaner language, and
And let's get
we'll it back.
let's get some input
I
from the
don't-
city.
I don't
we
want to
could-
put it
we
off
could
too
come-
long, though,
that's
because
me.
we could come back
We've
at our
already
next
been
meeting.
putting this off.
if you
and
think you
we're
can have something
already-
back
Yeah.
for next meeting,
Yeah, I think we could have it. for
I
the
make a
next
motion,
meeting.
we table this until next meeting.
Okay?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any
Okay.
opposed?
We'll work on it, we'll try and come back
Well,
with some.
let me get out of public hearing then, okay?
I
Before
make a
we
motion, we go out of public hearing.
Well, I need to basically let the public make a comment, so let me do that before
Anybody make
we go for the vote.
comments on food trucks?
Anybody else like to comment on this particular ordinance? Okay. Do I have a motion then to table ordinance 1820, a request to amend Title 10 zoning regulation on food trucks? Excuse me.
Make a
Do I have a
we go
motion to go out of public hearing?
Okay,
We
I'll
got a lot of
second-
motion.
okay, I'll
Second?
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay.
And now we're in
Now
favor.
motion to
Now, do I
table.
need a motion to table, ordinance 1820 requesting amendment to Title 10 zoning regulation?
Yes, I
Do I
make
have-
that motion that we go ahead and we table the Title 10, what did you call it?
Yeah, ordinance 18-20.
18-20, the Title 10 for the food trucks.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to add to that motion that we get just a clear definition of some of the wording, and that we have it ready for next council meeting.
Excellent.
I'll second that.
Second, let's see, that is a table. Do I need a roll call on that? Okay, I think it's all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll table that ordinance until we have more information. Thank you. Okay, hey, we're making some progress. We now have some presentations. We'd like, if we can, who is going to help us understand the ranking choice voting presentation. If you stand up to the mic, please give us your name and kind of help understand what this is all about. Thank you.
Okay, we did get a copy of this. Oh, okay. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can tell you're busy tonight, so I'll try to be as
That's
brief as
okay.
possible.
This is important.
My name is Stan Lockhart, and I represent Utah Ranked Choice Voting. I've been on a city council. I've been involved in city government for a long time. Have a varied career in service and public service, and I'm just grateful to be here tonight. Ranked choice voting is something that's been happening around this country more and more. Maine just passed a citizen initiative to do a significant amount of ranked choice voting in its state. But in state after state, they're finding that there are some advantages of ranked choice voting over our traditional voting methods. This year, in the 2018 legislative session, the legislature virtually unanimously authorized cities to use ranked choice voting in their elections. We had no votes in the Senate. We had 2 no votes in the House, and those no votes weren't because they opposed ranked choice voting. They wanted a couple of other alternative methods inserted in this bill. But I think what the legislature recognized, and what I've recognized over the years, is that our current method of voting has some flaws, and our founders, America's founders, when they created our system of representative republic, they told us over and over that an engaged public was critical to the success of our form of government. And our current system of government, or this current method of voting, doesn't always produce the very best engagement. So ranked choice voting works like this. Instead of having a campaign where you vote for one person and you have a primary and a general election, you essentially just rank your votes, and you get rid of the need for a primary, and you can just have one election. And so if there are 5 people running, you can rank them 1 through 5. And then when all the votes are counted and all the number ones are counted, if someone gets over 50% of the vote, then they're in without going to the ranked choice. But if no one gets 50% of the vote, then you take the person who's at the bottom, you take their votes out, you cross out the number ones, figuratively speaking, you put their number 2s, and you reshuffle the deck. And then you see if a person gets 50% of the vote or more. And you keep doing that until someone gets enough votes and they get the majority of the voters voting for them. Now, my history within the political parties, they've been using this for years in their conventions. And so if you find people who've been delegates to either the Democrat or the Republican parties, you'll find that they're very used to ranked choice voting. And when we started doing it, I was quite opposed to it. And I was quite opposed because of very superficial arguments that somehow this was going to help minority candidates and it was going to somehow be complicated and confusing. And what we discovered in our parties is that they picked up on it right away. They figured out how to do it. It was not that difficult. And they cut the time down of those conventions from all day to maybe a little less than half the day, which, if you've ever been to a convention before, it was well worth the effort. And it took us a few times around before I came around. I think I really became a believer in ranked choice voting in the 2002 convention where Jim Hansen had retired from the 1st Congressional District. And we had 12 candidates, 12 Republican candidates running for that seat. Using ranked choice voting, we were in and out of there in less than 4 hours. Now, it took the counters a little longer, but the delegates themselves were able to vote and then get out of there. Now, that's not really the reason to do it in a public election, but let me give you some advantages to doing ranked choice voting over our current methodology. The first thing that it does is it gives a heavy incentive for candidates to be civil with one another. If there's anything that's happened to politics, just even in the last few years, we've seen this huge divide where we're no longer talking to each other. And there's a tendency to go after people personally rather than to talk about issues. Under ranked choice voting, you always want your opponent's number 2. So there's this necessity for you to be nice to them and to talk about the issues and to talk about how you're different from them on the issues. That helps our democracy. It helps this process to have more civility. Second thing it does is it produces a more engaged voter. If you're younger than about 40, you'll love ranked choice voting. If you're older than 40, the first time around, you'll have a question, but by the time you've gone through it once, you'll still like it. because it produces a need for people to start looking beyond just that one candidate they like. Now they need to figure out, if there are 5 candidates running, who's my number 4? Who's my number 3? And so you find them getting far more engaged in the process. It's no longer, who does my brother like the best? Okay, I'm just gonna vote for them. You've got to now figure out, what do these candidates stand for? What do they believe in? And then you've got to go. Now, you're not required to rank all the votes, but we find that the overwhelming majority of voters in place after place that uses ranked choice voting, they do rank them all because they want to be in it till the very end.
Sure.
Okay? It gets rid of vote splitting. Under our current system, if you have 3 people running and 2 are very similar, you might have the majority of your voters vote for one of those 2 candidates, and someone who's really the preference of a minority of voters, who may be a one-issue candidate, they can slip in and win an election. Under ranked choice voting, that doesn't happen, because you can put 1, 2, and 3 and still get one of the top 2 people that you want to get into office. It cuts down on cost. You now avoid the need for a primary. I had the mayor of Draper tell me, he said, Stan, my last election, it'd be so great to only have one election. He said I had to go raise $100,000 to go campaign for this seat. And then when I made it in the general, I had to raise another $100,000 to run against exactly the same person I ran against in the primary. He said it would have been so much better to do it once. And so that's yet another advantage. Now, the savings in the primary is offset a little bit by additional cost in ballot design and ballot counting. But overall, cities still come out a winner on the cost side of the equation. I would just say that ranked choice voting is worth consideration for cities around the state. It is the first year that it's been authorized by the legislature to do so. One thing that we found, and that you should know up front, is that our county clerks are struggling. They hate change. And really, it doesn't matter whether it was vote by mail. They hated that before we started it. They hate every change we try to make. And they should, because if they have an election where the voters don't understand what they're doing, then sometimes they take it out on them the next time they run for office. So we totally understand why change is hard. But this system is really simple to understand. People get it, and they like it. Poll after poll shows that people like ranked choice voting. And so I just want to encourage you to consider using it in the 2019 election. If you decide you'd like to, you've got to send a resolution to the lieutenant governor that is decided upon before January 1st of this coming year.
Okay, by January 1st.
Yes.
Has there been any cities that have already approved it or adopted it in the state of Utah since it was passed?
So it just passed this year, and it
So-
can't be used till next year. So none of them have opted in yet.
Okay.
However, this is my 5th presentation. We have several other people around the state that are doing presentations. I'm guessing that out of the 247 cities, approximately 50 to 75 will seriously consider it. We've had several cities already ask us for the resolution with an indication that they are seriously considering doing it.
What states have already adopted it?
So it's mostly been done at the municipal level. In fact, one of the things that the legislature felt strongly about, since it's mostly been used at the municipal level around the country, California, New Mexico, Minnesota, Maine, and city after city in all of those states and other places as well. It's used out of the country far more. There are a couple of countries that use this almost exclusively.
Okay. Comments, questions?
I'd be interested in knowing some cities, some municipalities that are very
have
similar
operated
to ours in demographics and their, what that has looked like. I
How
don't
about if
know
I
where-
do a little research and
That would be
provide you
great,
some more
Mayor.
information? And then from that, we have to make a decision, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to simply recommend putting it on the agenda for a resolution unless I get a sense that the council would consider it. But I think education is key. And again, we would have to react and have this put in place before January 1st, so.
'Cause I know when we vote
It's
by mail,
interesting
we were
to-
not one of the first cities, to do that, to adopt it. I think we kind of seen some other cities and kind of how the vote by mail went. I don't know.
So
sometimes
maybe
I'm
we want to wait
inclined
a year.
to
Or
see,
2
you know,
years.
how other cities do it. I'm not a,
I would,
don't
I
know.
would be interested in seeing what's
Okay.
happened.
but it's, I mean, it's a good option. It's an interesting concept.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Hey,
I-
thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, educating the voter. I mean, we had a really strong turnout in our last municipal. It was about 40%. Somewhere about there.
I think it was 36%.
Was
And
it?
once we went to vote by mail, that
Yeah.
actually increased our
Correct.
voting percentage. So with that new concept that, you know, and so again, it's like, okay, I don't know if it will increase the voting, because you're actually still getting your ballot by mail. You're just voting in a different process.
That's correct.
So and it might, I don't know, it might deter
That's-
some
that-
votes
that's
because
what
it
I
might be
was
a little more
wondering.
complicated. I don't know.
Well, let's go look and
I'd
see what
wanna
other
hear.
cities have
And I
Yeah,
wanna
found.
hear
no, I
and
agree.
Pull some evidence in and let you all assess that, because I think they're pretty typical of what we would experience in our society.
Yeah,
Particularly in a city close to our size.
yeah.
40,000, okay.
We found in
Same
terms of voter
demographics.
education that utilizing the same methodologies you do to educate voters on any issue,
Mm-hmm.
but whether it's the utility bill, you have an email list, you already have engagement strategies with your citizens. Using those same channels, you can very easily teach voters how to use this.
Yeah.
Okay. Other comments, council? Okay, hey,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Mr. Lockhart.
Appreciate the info. Okay. Could we got a presentation on UDOT?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Thomas Roylance. I'm a project manager for the Utah Department of Transportation, and I am the project manager for our 5600 South environmental study. We recently had a public open house as a scoping meeting, part of the NEPA process, as part of this study. I recognize some of you guys were able to attend. We appreciate your attendance, and thank you for the invitation to come tonight and present some of the information that we shared there at the meeting, or at the open house, and maybe give you some feedback of some of the comments that the public had. We have contracted with Lochner to actually perform the study. They're our subject experts, and I'd like to introduce Andrea Clayton. She's the project manager for Lochner, and she'll go through and talk more about the study and what we found at the open house.
Jason, did they have a PowerPoint? Were you
Yeah.
able to get it?
Yeah, it's not working.
Not working? Okay.
It was up a few minutes
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, battery died.
Oh, on the,
Yeah, on the computer.
oh, okay.
Embarrassing.
Yeah.
Won't happen
Need a
again.
backup cord.
Won't happen again.
Mm.
We'll do our best to talk through it. We do have most of the graphics and information that was on the presentation intended for tonight is on our project website.
Okay.
And Jason just handed out some business cards that has
Okay.
the project website information
Oh,
in there.
perfect, so we can pull it up.
So when I refer to a map, you can pull it up on the website, or a process graphic that is available on the website. So we'll just do our best to explain it and work through it. First of all, Mayor and council members, thank you for taking the time to let us present this project. We're just here to give you an update and some information. We're just starting this project. We're very early on. It's a 15-month project, an environmental assessment where UDOT is evaluating existing problems and long-term transportation solutions on 5600 South from 3500 West to I-15 and including I-15, the interchange. We're following the NEPA process, which Thomas alluded to. It's the National Environmental Policy Act process. It's a federal process. It's required because there's a federal action. What the process does is it requires federal agencies to take into consideration environmental and social impacts of their proposed actions before they make a decision. That being said, the Federal Highway Administration and Utah Department of Transportation
entered an agreement last year where UDOT has been assigned authority to make these decisions. In essence, UDOT is the federal agency, and they're the ultimate decision maker for this environmental assessment. So I want to spend most of the time just kind of going through the process, because we're early on in the process. We don't have any information on what's proposed yet. So I just kind of want to explain and walk through the NEPA process. And before I do that, I want to explain the long-term transportation decision-making process. Basically, from the time an idea is very early, the first time a project is thought about, to construction. It's a long-term 20 to 30-year process. The first step is that something is put on the long-range transportation plan. And Wasatch Front Regional Council is responsible for that plan. They update it on a periodic basis. The most current plan that's adopted right now was adopted in 2015, and it runs through 2040. Both the corridor widening from 5600 South from 3500 West to I-15 and the interchange are currently on that plan. Wasatch Front is in the process of updating that plan. By summer of next year, there will be a new plan. So basically, that new plan will look out farther into the future, and we'll be looking at 2050. So our project is going to be looking at that same horizon, and we will be looking at transportation solutions that will accommodate the planned growth all the way through 2050. So that's the first step. It's already on the long-range plan, and then frequently there will be a concept report that's done. There has been a concept report that's done for this project for part of it. In 2016, there was a concept report prepared for just the interchange. It didn't include the 5600 South corridor, and it was using 2040 traffic projections. So we're going to take that plan, and we're going to use the information and build on it. We'll update that to look farther down the road to the 2050, and we'll also look at the corridor. Following the concept study is the environmental process, and that's where we are. That's the project that we're doing right now, to basically get approval to move forward and go to the next step, which is final design, and then there's right-of-way acquisition. Following right-of-way acquisition is construction and maintenance. Our project, the environmental process, is anticipated to be completed in fall of 2019. There's currently no funding for construction, so we can't tell you when this will be built. We can tell you that currently UDOT has allocated funding for the state for various projects through 2024. So it's not likely that anything will be constructed before 2024. So that's kind of the big picture, and now I want to kind of zoom in on what are the steps in the environmental process, the project that we're doing right now. We're in the very early stages. We're in what's called scoping. And what scoping is, it's a period where you're gathering information and you're identifying the problems. You're getting input from the public and the agencies on what are the problems out there, what is the scope of what we want to address in this project. We're in a formal scoping period right now. We had the scoping meeting on the 22nd of August, and we will be taking public comment through the 21st of September. The comments need to be in writing, and if anybody is interested in making comments, there are more cards right there. The comments can be submitted by email or through our website, and the address is on those cards. After the comment period closes, we'll take, we'll gather these comments, we'll kind of look through them, what are the themes, what are the problems that are identified, and that will help us decide what are the problems that we want to solve. So the next step after the scoping period is what we call the purpose and need. And what that purpose and need is to just, the purpose is what problem are we trying to solve, and the need is what factual evidence do we have that a problem exists. There's a good chance that it's going to be a capacity project. We know that. We already know that there are capacity issues. We're hearing some things about safety. So purpose and need will be about capacity probably, but it could include other things as well. And so the time frame, the purpose and need, will be through fall and early winter of 2018. after we've defined the problem that we're trying to solve, we'll start looking at alternatives. And we'll develop conceptual alternatives that we think can solve these problems. And there may be a handful of them. We'll go through a screening process where we narrow that down and eliminate the alternatives that don't solve the problem as well, down to one or maybe two alternatives that we will evaluate in detail. And those alternatives that we evaluate in detail will study all kinds of impacts to the natural environment, to the social environment, and we'll develop a document that outlines both the benefits and the impacts for the build alternative, and compare it to the no-build alternative, which is always an option. It's on the table. It's what if we do nothing? When that environmental assessment is complete and it's available for public review, we'll come back with a public hearing, a formal public hearing. That's anticipated to be in the summer of 2019, where we'll have a 30-day comment period. We'll solicit comments from the public and agencies. When that closes, we'll compile those comments and respond to them. Every comment will be responded to in the final EA, and UDOT will make a final decision on, basically that decision is either you can move forward with this project and you can start doing final design and acquiring right-of-way, or we'll do nothing. So it's kind of that's the federal process that we're going through, and if anyone has questions, feel free to ask at any point.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Finish, please.
Okay. I think, so as far as existing conditions, that's part of what we're looking at during the scoping period. We know traffic congestion is a big problem. There's a lot of traffic from Hill Air Force Base. There's inadequate ramp capacity and traffic queuing up onto the freeway. We know there's concerns with the numerous school crossings on the corridor, and that the rail trail crossing is at grade, and if additional lanes are added, then there's concern about that safety. From the concept report that was done in 2016, we know that the congestion that's centered around the interchange is mainly due to a few factors. One is that there's several traffic signals that are closely spaced. Two is that there's a lot of turning movements at the 1900 West, 5600 South intersection. And three is that there's large volumes of traffic to Hill Air Force Base. Probably the biggest problem that we saw with that concept study is that when the northbound, when traffic is going northbound on I-15 and exiting and wants to turn left or go west on 5600 South, and at the same time the Hill Air Force Base traffic is exiting, plus turning movements at the 1900 West 5600 South intersection, there's just not enough capacity to handle that.
That's correct.
There also is a lot of growth projected, especially with Falcon Hill, and by 2040, there's not enough capacity at the interchange to accommodate that projected growth. So the concept report looked at a couple of different options that could address the interchange capacity. That concept report is also available on the website. Two of them were kind of fleshed out in more detail. We don't have a recommended one per se right now because we're looking at it through a different lens with the 2050 traffic. One option that could potentially work is a single point urban interchange, which is a SPUI. There's lots of SPUIs up and down I-15 where instead of having two traffic signals at the interchange where you've got the ramps on one side, there's a single signal in the middle and the traffic moves through in a curve.
One nearby here is Riverdale Road and Interstate 84. That interchange there is the single point urban interchange.
So those types of interchanges can typically handle more traffic. One idea that was also included in that concept in the concept report was to have a flyover where traffic moving northbound on I-15 would take a bridge over 5600 South if they wanted to continue onto Riverdale Road or Freeway Park Drive. So these are just some ideas that we will be looking at again and looking at in more detail. Another concept that we looked at was just adding additional lanes on 5600 South and additional turning lanes in the same configuration that it is in right now. So we'll get there. We're not there yet, so we don't know yet what kind of improvements will make it through the screening process. Does look like we probably will have some impacts to the Hill Air Force Base and the enhanced use lease property, so we're working with Hill Air Force Base to figure out what does that approval process look like. and we know that there will be coordination throughout the project. We're also coordinating with UTA on the Front Runner crossing. So let me just give you a little bit of an idea of what we heard at the public scoping meeting. We've got 31 comments to date. 9 comments were received by a written comment form at the meeting, and we have 22 emails that have come in so far. They keep coming in, and when there was an article recently, we got a flurry of more comments. Common themes that we were hearing, most of them were acknowledging that there was a problem on the corridor and something needed to be done. So 16 commenters said, we recognize that this is a problem, something's got to be done, the sooner the better. The second most common comment that we got was related to safety. 8 commenters expressed concerns about accessing onto the 5600 South Corridor, either from driveways or from cross streets. 3 commenters mentioned concerns regarding pedestrian crossings. 1 commenter was concerned specifically with school safety. There was 1 comment regarding emergency response and 1 regarding speed. The third most common comment that we got were property owners concerned with impacts to the property. What is the process? How does the compensation get determined? How do you determine if there's going to be a full purchase of my home or just a partial purchase? I don't want to live too close to the road. And then there were 4 more comments that we had 3 each, which was 3 comments on the intersection of 3100 West, that it's difficult to turn on to 5600 South. Noise concerns, aesthetics. People want the corridor to look nice and represent Roy. And finally, 3 more people wanted the traffic to go elsewhere. So move the interchange, move the gate to Hill Air Force Base, or let's look on another route.
Send them down south.
There was one of those. So that's kind of an overview of the comments we're getting so far. We will compile a scoping report when the comment period is done, where we'll provide all of the comments in full, verbatim, and also just a summary of how many comments were on each. We'll put that on our website. It is a matter of public record. We'll keep updating the website as we go along. So the scoping period will end on the 21st of September, and then we'll move into the purpose and need. I think we kind of already went through what that is, what's the problem, and how do we solve it, and then basically how do we know that we've solved it. So we're going to identify criteria where we measure how well these alternatives will perform. So just to wrap up, walking through the steps moving forward, the purpose and need will be complete around the fall of this year. The alternatives will be developed and screened through winter and spring of 2019. We'll have a draft EA available for public comment and a public hearing in the summer of 2019. A final EA and a decision in fall of 2019. And construction is to be determined, but likely not before 2024. And that's it.
Okay. Are there any questions for us?
Any questions, council?
No, I appreciate this information. I think this will help us to filter comments and questions and stuff from, from citizens concerning it.
And please direct them to our
That
public
website.
involvement team and the website and the telephone number on that card. We're happy to take questions, and we do track them and we discuss them as a team, so please send comments our way.
Thank you for the possible timeline as well.
Yeah,
that
that's,
helps.
yeah.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
If that's all right. You said the studies, everything will be done by 2019, but then construction won't start till 2024. How come that 5-year time period?
There's no funding for construction allocated at this time.
Okay, so it's a funding issue then.
So even at 2024, that's as far as we've identified for our project.
So it could be farther.
So it could be farther.
Yeah, and so then that study, actually, if you have that much time in between the study.
There is a danger we'd have to update it, right?
Right.
That's what you're
Yes.
Because that's, from 2016 to now, you're already updating the study because you went to 2040 versus 2050. So if we get out to 2024 and then, we got to study more.
And many times with projects, once you have the environmental document done, you might have a local government official that might champion the project with the legislature. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that, you know, somebody in the legislature might want to get this project funded sooner, so.
Yeah, it becomes a political discussion that will take place. I think my concern, well, as you stated, Wasatch Front Regional Council will be weighing in on this and other projects, and obviously setting priorities based on the evidence. I know they changed up some of the scoping requirements that says priorities can be based more on how it's tied to other cities. I mean, there's a lot of things now, variability. It's not just how many accidents, how many rooftops, and how many cars. So there's some possibility of changes. But I think at this point, once the environmental impact study is done, or you're calling the environmental assessment is complete, then at that point, then it becomes kind of a political issue to try to get priority funding. And I think I should just tell you right now, my concern would be is that Hill Air Force Base is going to stay the same or grow, which is going to put more demand on the only access to Hill Air Force Base as Weber County is actually Roy Gate. Hooper is still going to grow, as well as West Haven. And the decision in terms of putting the continuation of the legacy, okay, is still not planned out to go further than basically 1,800, I think, in Davis County. And so the reality is getting our legacy loop in the bottom part of the county is not projected to happen probably for a while, in large part because there's no population to meet the demand at this point. And so all that's going to put pressure on all of the arteries in Roy City, because between, as I see it, between the demand, the growth, the shopping centers in Riverdale, access to Hill Air Force Base, and to the freeway that's somewhat convenient over a bridge, okay, Roy City has a great artery to make that happen. The problem is you can only park so many cars on that street before it just gets nonsense. It takes 30 minutes in the morning for people to get roughly 2.5 miles, and we're seeing the problem, and it's going to get worse. And so we're looking for this study to be a solution, and then based on what the evidence supports and what the data says, then hopefully we can try to set the priorities in motion to expedite this as the best we can. So it's just one of the processes.
Are you presenting this to the other cities that are potentially impacted by this, or just Roy because it is Roy?
We've contacted the other cities by phone to let them know what's going on and given them information available, but we are not going to the city councils. That's not anything that we've planned yet.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it definitely directly impacts Hooper because that's their direct corridor into Hooper. I mean, it affects all
West
of them.
Haven a little bit.
West Haven,
Some.
because they all come through Roy to get to the freeway.
Yeah.
That's for sure. We've identified those cities as stakeholders as part of this project as well, so we try to keep them informed as well.
Yeah.
Power in numbers.
Yeah. And with that, in the WACOG, in terms of sharing the information, and the Wasatch Regional Council in terms of sharing information, we'll try to make sure that all the cities that have some voice in this conversation are aware of what's happening, obviously would find interest in whatever the outcome of this will be. And then from that, hopefully we can leverage some strategies to help us to make sure we accommodate the needs of the people. The fact of the matter is, not something you would be concerned about, but surely we're concerned about. Roy residents are now using Roy City roads to navigate through the city to get off of 5600 because of the congestion. Needless to say, that puts a lot more pressure and a lot more use on our roads, so we're now have to carry the infrastructure costs to keep those updated. Every street from 48 to 4,000, the only people that are breathing relief right now is 6,000 because that is an east-west corridor, and we're seeing now a lot more traffic on 6,000. So the reality is we're feeling the pinch, in large part because we are where we are and by location. And so hopefully this solution will fix a lot of those problems that once the assessment's done and we find ourselves hopefully in a better position. So appreciate everything. We're looking forward to the outcome. I think what you'll find, in all fairness, and I can't speak for all the Roy, but a lot of Roy residents recognize the need, and they're probably going to be somewhat supportive of trying to help us to come up with the right answer. I think your action and efforts will help us to find what that right answer is. So we appreciate your time, and if we can help in any way to provide information or help, let us know, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. We have reports and discussion items. Let's go ahead and city manager report.
Okay.
Oh, well, there's just a presentation, so we don't have to go out of public hearing.
Public comment?
Shouldn't we go to public comment now?
Actually, it's scheduled, but it's not scheduled until after the review. So I'll just state the agenda. We can work the discussion in terms of where best to put public comment, but let me get through the agenda, and then we can have public comment on any subject you want. Go ahead, city manager report.
Okay, feeding the football team tomorrow, Roy High, 5:30 at the.
Is it 5:30 or 6:30?
Is it by
they
the weight
want us-
room?
Yeah, it's by the weight room.
Okay.
We don't really know when they're gonna complete practice, so we'll just be ready at 5:30, and then
Okay.
we just kinda hang out until they're done.
Okay.
Feeding the seniors
says
on
6:30.
September 13th at 10:30 a.m. And then the George Wallen parking lot is going to be closed on Sunday and Monday, this upcoming Sunday, Monday, for resurfacing.
Okay.
I sent you guys an email on the website. Morgan and Mark has been working with our website people. I did talk with Morgan today. They are going to try to make a couple of the areas on the face of the website a little bit more different, maybe a pop-out kind of a version. However, with the data that they were able to pull, most of them are getting through the website okay, just a couple little small glitches. We'll see if we can try to make those a little bit better in the next few days.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay. Mayor and council reports. Council, any comments? Issues?
No, a couple of things. I just want to publicly state that I appreciate the council kind of holding down the fort while I took some time off to be able to spend with my family here. So, because I didn't really attend anything the month of August, so I appreciate all the support. I did also, and I don't know if this was already stated, but I did also give a report to our Roy Days committee. And also mentioned, and from the council, how much that we supported and appreciated all the time and effort that our staff puts into our Roy Day celebration. And there was just a few things that we discussed that needs to be kind of updated and changed. And if you have any comments or suggestions that you have for Roy Days coming up in the near future, you can go ahead and forward those to me, and then I can bring those up in our following discussions. But I did offer my thanks to all of them.
Okay, excellent. Brian, you had a comment?
I was just going to say the Economic Advisory Committee met, and we had some good meetings today.
Good.
Okay.
It's encouraging.
Okay. Anything else, council?
No, to go along with that, there's some good things that are happening with some properties up here on 1900. Can't get into the details because the property owners are still in negotiation, but I think at the end of the day, when it all comes together in the next few months, the citizens should be happy and should be good enhancements to this community.
Okay, thank you. Just one thing, if I could, council, the city will need to present to the council basically the final way ahead associated with the recycling. The council agreed in the workshop to have that pretty well ready to go by 1 January. To do so, we need to make sure that we advertise it, get the word out, how that's going to be structured and how it'll work. And so look forward over the next couple of months to get all that kind of worked out and provided to you, then you'll know how we're going to approach the recycling in the near future.
One thing I was, just to go along with that I've been kind of noticing, there's been a lot of news stories concerning recycling that is just, I know KSL did one. I've seen it on multiple national programs and stuff talking about the problems and the issues that are going on with recycling. So I think that's good because I think it's bringing a lot of people more aware that there is some issues with the recycling program in the nation. It's not just Roy City, but it's nationwide, the issues. And so I think hopefully people are kind of getting an understanding of those issues that are out there.
Yeah, excellent point, excellent point. Okay, having said that, there's no follow-up information, anything we need to go? Public comment. If you have something you'd like to share with us, please, just open to public, any topic, any subject, please step up to the mic and just give us your name and address. Anything you'd like to share? Thoughts? It was great to hear from you. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Appreciate your efforts.
Okay, seeing none or hearing none, I'll go ahead and ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mayor,
So
I make-
moved.
yep. I'll second that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Yes, appreciate you staying.